I will now invite our esteemed speaker today, Mr. Uchita. He is not just a clinical expert, but he is also playing a crucial role in the shaping Malaysia VNR 2025. His insight will be invaluable as we embark on this journey together. Okay. A little brief introduction about Mr. Uchita. He is the chairman managing director at Global Sustainability Solution, has served as Sri Lanka's chief negotiator for the UN Sustainable Development Goals and advisor to the Ministry of Sustainable Development and whatnot, and many more achievement. We could write a book about him. Okay, so without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Uchita.
Thank you for inviting me here. Uh, Before I get into the formalities, um, let me thank uh, that hook. I know this is the first time in life that I'm calling you. I'm in Malaysia, so I'll do the formalities and then drop the formalities. Um, uh, there was something when I met Denison, a name called Jayasuriya comes, and then I asked him where he origins are from Sri Lanka. But before that, when I was speaking at the UN, I noticed somebody who I had never met before, always in front taking pictures of me, and then asking for my WhatsApp and sending me the pictures itself. I was a little, he didn't look like a photographer, he looked like more of a professorial kind and taking pictures. And he was so kind and so humble to send me the pictures very fast, and I put them on Facebook immediately. So Denison and I have been meeting for some time. Um, I was chief negotiator for Sri Lanka for the UN process for 2 years, plus the advisor, cabinet advisor to the government on designing this. I'll slowly talk about that. Um, um, I just wanted to thank Denison personally for the invitation, for the friendship, for the brotherhood of things, because Denison and Rose have been to my place. We've shared meals together, and I believe we are an extended global family, and that is very important. So fantastic to be in Malaysia after some time. I used to come here very often. A decade and a half ago to train the consumer movement on climate change and sustainability. I'm back after some time, but I think they will join, some of them will join me. So fantastic, fantastic. So this is what we met up 2 days ago, very briefly, three of us, three of you with me. Denison, this is what you told me at the end, and I'm going to give an interpretation to it. The first part says, this is what you asked, what is the global experience of voluntary national reviews, VNRs? That was the first that you thought that I should touch on. Second is, what are the alternative or independent reviews that is there in the world? Thirdly, what could be a voluntary parliamentary review? And my twist on it, Denison, would be as I came up with this early morning, and I hope the early morning, normally the early morning stuff works for me before I came here. This slide is completely just to give an oversight on what this is going to be. So to answer the first question, basically the SDGs and the state of world is the best way that I think. I don't think VNRs exist out of the global context, and it should not be out of the global context. So that is the first part I will cover. Now, you are more interested in what VNRs are and VPRs are. The VPR was in the first introduced to the world by me and a team from Sri Lanka, a voluntary people's review against the voluntary national review at the first inception of things happening. Because I left being the advisor to the government in 2018, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. That's why I have my one in the center, right? Small screen, but good enough. Um, so before that, I just forgot to mention this. No, I have not done it. I'll come to that. No, no. Oh, if we start doing this not in sync, we are going to have a problem. If this works, that's fine. But you will have to remind me when I'm in the thing. I'll forget to do this, but you're my man, right? Okay. So the first part of that is to see whether we have an understanding as to where the world is and where we are in our country's responsibilities, delivering what is called a transformation that we promised, right? That is the first part of it. So the VNRs, VPRs are going to be in part of that. And then the macro of what I want to do today with this group, particularly the morning group, is to run through a methodology for monitoring, review, follow-up, and implementation. This is what a VNR process has to do. I'll go into details as to what countries agreed to do, promised to do, and what they are not doing, and why we are doing alternatives, and what are the impacts. Has anyone taken an impact accounting, impact investment accounting of any of this happened for the last 8 years on Earth? No. So it's time that when we also initiate something new, we need to look at what the impact is rather than just doing it for the sake of doing things, which is the trend. That is not where we are. And I'm extremely glad to be here. That we move to the recalibration for the transformation. I'll show you that the transformation is not even stagnant, it's downhill, not uphill, not flat, it's downhill. And then you need to recalibrate what the transformation means. And please, Denison, please slow me down. You can do any gestures, shout at me, whatever, because I'll keep on forgetting that of my speed of voice. Well, that would be fantastic, no? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a good verification. I'm okay, right? Yeah, anyone also stop me anywhere. I'm going to take it a little slowly, but then comes the more linkages between people and their processes. Right? Institutions are made out of people, whether they are called governmental, intergovernmental, non-governmental, business, whatever. Right? So we will talk about all of that. Just want to start up with one statement. If this is okay, Denison, Sue, and the others, if this rationale of conducting the next 3-4 hours is fine, then I can bet on. But I want to say this. These are things that I have made statements from time to time to various groups in different parts of the world. The future calls for responding to potential breakdowns, adapting alternatives, and forging transitional measures. Foresight into scenarios-based planning will define the transformation for business to thrive. Transformation requires addressing the root causes that generate and reproduce economic, social, environmental, and governance inequities. Now, that is the first statement that I would like to make. I just want to say, probably Finland becomes the first country from stating on paper their ambitions into making climate aspirations and climate promises into law. All the other countries and the NDCs don't hold legality, the nationally determined contributions. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of promise, but to hold the responsible entities to their work has to be law. Bhutan, gross national happiness is one of them. I went on a lab to Bhutan with the GNH Commission a few years ago. And I've been always fascinated for the last 2 decades or more on the GNH. And I will tell you stories. If I remember when Rio Plus 20 was failing, GNH became the sole inspiration before the Colombia and Ecuador, I think, came up with the SDG concept, and we were locked in rooms in Bonn trying to navigate this. First part of it. This is the overview of what I'm trying to do. If that is okay, okay. So may not be as direct, but I'm going to, you can ask me any question from any part of it. You can challenge what I'm saying. You can propose anything. That's the whole game, how it goes. So next slide, please. If I forget, yep. I mean, yeah, he knows me by now. He knows what is happening in my mind. So this is me, but what I'm trying to do is an inclusive transformation towards sustainable development, Sri Lanka's voluntary people's review, the first ever in the world. And I will tell you how important this is. The context, concept, content, commitment for a voluntary parliamentarians review in Malaysia. So the methodology in the middle of this is the most important part of what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Trying to load a lot of things into one. But let's start somewhere here. After the COVID 19 breakdown in the world, suddenly the World Economic Forum calls terms that the world is in a polycrisis. That is one of the first times that the word has been used. What it means, I'm sure everybody of you would know this, but what it means is that all the different challenges, problems in the world are interlinked, entwined, and connected to each other. So the World Economic Forum took all their lifetime to segregate economic problems from social problems and environmental problems, governance problems. For them, and who the people who manage the economic systems and the trade systems, where you keep them as the separate temple, suddenly felt that everything seemed to be connected, because words do not matter. If suddenly a crisis like this comes and the small medium enterprises become so important suddenly, and they start providing you the riches even to their doorstep, when you don't have anything to any means to buy. Most of us in all over the world, from the north to south to east to west, went through this. So polycrisis was understood, and I will show you how the mappings that we have done has given OECD, UN more insight into looking at the SDGs as interlinked manner. That is what you see on the next diagram. I'll use this to see. Is this working? I'm not sure whether. Oh, I'm doing crazy things. So the pointer is this one. Yeah. No, it's not going to work. I'm going to walk. By the way, I might need to sit. I'm wearing knee braces, but I will forget that it's paining. Okay. I promise you that I forget it's paining, and I will be dancing around. So, how many of you have seen this diagram or not? Yeah. So this is SDGs. Nothing else is SDGs. I took things for granted, but maybe I'll explain that to you also. By last year, midterm review of the United Nations Secretary General's scientific team on SDGs. I met the chair in Brussels last year and discussed this. Had very clearly said that out of the 169 targets of the 17 SDGs, only about 12% are on track of being achieved in 2030. Only about 12%, and they have not taken into consideration, I think totally about 144, which they claim that they don't have data for the other. My question was, did you look at the interlinkages? Did you look at the trade-offs? Did you look at the impacts? No. So 169 versus the 244 target indicators is the most linear approach to mapping an impact on Earth. The world doesn't work that way. That is where the polycrisis and the interlinkagers go. This was done by UL Desa, a colleague. Initially, I will show you the mappings when we were doing at the same time from UN Desa, from OECD, from ESCAP to us, how we were trying to figure this out in the world first time out. And then I will show you the stuff, how countries like Mongolia and so on and so forth have taken over. The other part, the Stockholm Environment Resilience Institute. By the way, if you have, I hope if you have seen these before, understand these before, excuse me, but I think these are extremely important analysis that comes not from governments, not from UN alone, but comes from very scientific database analysis for years and years and years. 2009, they came up with the 9 planetary boundaries you would have heard. And look at where the world's planetary boundaries are being breached. And see when it comes to 2023, how the breaching has happened. What this simply means is that even if we zero our carbon emissions, even if we start behaving well now on Earth as responsible humans, we have changed the Earth system. And you can't reverse an Earth system in a generation or a couple of generations. So you're going to live in a very warm world. We all are going to live in a warm world. We are going to live with a lot of chaos around us. And please understand, UN ESCAP in the region has said that to achieve the SDG targets will now take to 2062. I have no understanding on the methodology of the calculation because it is written nowhere. One. Second is, have we taken into account that Russia will invade their neighbor and Israel would invade all the other neighbors in that part, and that these spiraling effects could happen? No, that is one of the limited interventions that we are seeing. It can escalate to proportions beyond imagination, right? And then the rich poor gap is not going down. The social protection ceilings are being changed, giving amazingly different analysis scenarios. And one of the things that I understood that you all are doing is going from region to region, mapping out the diversity of the issues. Because this is not Dolly the sheep, everybody is the same, let's propagate the same. It doesn't work that way. The world is with very diverse, dynamic, different scenarios. So scenarios modeling. Very quick before I go into why this is happening, and I'm just giving a first snapshot as to what the world, why the SDGs have gone wrong in the world, right? One, lack of policy coherence. Do we understand the terminology of what policy coherence means? So, sustainable development, when you discuss the basic, not sustainability, please, there's a huge difference between sustainability disclosing and sustainable development conceptualizing. Environmental, social, economic dimensions that comes together. In the evening, I'll try to talk more about it to a more civil society audience, but I'm trying to get into this very fast as I can. So these countries need to look at their different policies in convergence with each other. But you can see countries selecting economic policies overriding on environmental and social policies in countries, or superseding the mandates of others all the time. I would be surprised if a country is not doing so. So everywhere it shows the same scenario. Social protection will be compromised for economic growth like this. Environment, we don't talk about in most of the places. Environment becomes somebody's handout to somebody else. We will talk about that. But then when people do understand, when your ecological footprint goes down, your resilience goes down. Huge. And that is something at the end I will talk with this group, maybe not the other one. Institutional coherence. The number of planning mechanisms that a central government, a provincial government, a state government, a local government structure would have, and whether they are connected in one unison convergent decision making process. No, I think that is something that we will discuss in the sessions. How the local realities and meeting the federal to local realities in your system works or not, does not work. Lack of sustainable development budgeting and finance architecture. I will show you where the huge gaps in the financing architecture in the world is, and the stakeholder engagement. I think the worst process on earth that the SDG VNRs have shown is breaking the principle of leave no one behind. From the outset of voluntary national review processes, a few countries like Finland have tried to be more exemplary on that. But you can see that a macro amount of countries on a voluntary national reviews by governments would call people into a room for what is called consultation and what is called a verification. You sign on to a registry and you're part and parcel of a VNR that you have nothing to do with. And if your story is different, please tell me, I will tell the world. If your story is the same, tell me, I will tell the world that your story and my story are the same. And I discuss with you and where the VNR's reports are. Who has seen a VNR report in a country? What has been the follow-up of a VNR report presented to the high-level political forum? No, it is just a report. So that is the way to start with. The most important thing is the monitoring, evaluation, follow-up and review mechanism that the UN has asked for. Do you mind if I close this? I don't want entire Malaysia to come in. I know I'm a loud person. So that is something that you're embarking on. You're embarking on as well, on a voluntary parliamentarians review. I am so excited because we have not done that. I'll show you what we have done. And I know what has been happening in the name of parliamentarian reports, right? Interparliamentarian Union convened with UNDP and so on. But then my discussions with Denison, Sue, and my friend shows that the intent is really big, great. That is where you start with. So are we okay with the global stuff? Let's see whether this works. Yeah. Let me deep dive into this part, which is where the problems are, the financing. So, but still on the context, financing the transformation. When I was appointed as the advisor on sustainable development to design the entire blueprint for implementing the SDGs in Sri Lanka, that was the first ever cabinet ministry portfolio ever in Sri Lanka. And then I realized that there are no other prototype blueprints, experiences of a cabinet portfolio of sustainable development in the world. One or two had mentioned. So the country obviously did not know how to do. The second part was that this was very early, so that no one understood the SDGs at that time. So we needed to do something. The second part was that I had to work with multiple amount of institutions across the world who were making decisions doing this. One was OECD. So when we started the process on the 1st of January 2016, by the way, has anyone gone through this, understand this? Anyone has gone through the financing architecture? Okay. So initial understanding of the calculations from the UN system that the developing countries required about 2.5 million. There was a gap of about financing the SDGs, about 2.5 trillion US dollars. You know this term, billions to trillions? So billions to trillions is from the previous agenda, Agenda 21, 1992 Earth Summit that comes in. I was a steering committee member of the largest ever people's movement. I hope we will be meeting your colleague Gurmeet Singh, a very old time, past time colleague. I was very young. I can try to be young. I look at them and my team, I hope some of them join in as well. It's a little early. They're the future. They're the investment that you need to make. But midterm comes 8 years, 7.5, 8 years into thing. This is what has happened in the world. From 2.5 million gap of financing the SDGs in our part of the world has jumped to 3.9. It is increasing. What does it mean? It means that countries are not putting their money where the mouth is. The UN, all the negotiations with the richer countries is not putting the money for a transformation, unified transformation agenda in the world. That is not happening. And they are asking countries to find their own money and implement the transformation. And countries have been going through one of the worst economic downturns in the world. Where do they find money for sustainable development, transformation into that, when managing their people's simple livelihood becomes so hard? I will show you how we proposed how to do this when we come down to the methodology part of it. So then came this whole thing of blended financing. What does it mean? You're looking at private enterprise money now. The public funds cannot handle a transformation, so you need to bring in private funding, and that is when you start opening up public responsibilities and opening it up to with the private sector, and you will see, sorry for this word, using the 17 logos of SDGs being prostituted by all over the world, by everyone. Sri Lanka called itself in 2017 an SDG budget because UNDP gave them money to do something and put the logos in. They asked me to, I was invited by Parliament to analyze it. I yelled, what the hell is what you're writing and putting budget into it has to do with any of this? Then they came up with provincial reports, this thick, huge books, everywhere they want. And I went yesterday to Mardeka, lovely place. The SDG center. Oh, beautiful, I took pictures. Because I have no pictures as such. I only do the work. I have little pictures with SDGs behind. But keep this in mind, I don't know whether Dennis and you even knew this. The SDGs were launched, not the SDGs, so 2030 agenda for transforming our world was launched on the 26th of November, November 2015, if I'm not date mistaken, something like that. And the first thing that happened in the launch was the UN New York buildings. This corner was draped by a digital banner which completely had different logos. I don't think I have this. Maybe I'll have in the evening. Read SDG 2 if somebody can open it up. But SDG 2 means, can somebody quickly open up and I will explain what I'm talking about, because these are the important factors going forward. Oh yeah. Denison has it at his fingertips. Okay. SDG 2. Count with me. 1, end hunger. 2, achieve food security. 3, improve nutrition. And 4, promote sustainable agriculture. 4, aspects. What does the logo say? What does the logo say for SDG 2? Zero hunger. Does zero hunger cover achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture? Please check who did this. There was one private large multinational corporation with the International Chamber of Commerce who sponsored this. That is a story that goes on, and how it became a branding game for transformation rather than a process of transformation. Keep in mind, when you do good things, keep in mind that good things must be done correctly. That is primarily important. And then I'm not going into a lot of stuff, but if you look at ecosystem services based accounting, I will come at the end to show you where countries' budgeting is never done based on this kind of rationales. It's done on a very linear, monetary, financial growth based stuff. And then, challenge is not about achieving sustainable development in the world. That was the bare minimum when the Brundtland Commission started convening themselves 1987. After the 1972 First Earth Summit was convened, maybe I'll talk about it. You know, you can move from here, but the current challenges are about regenerating the ecosystem, regenerating the earth systems more than just maintaining them. Because we have breached every possible aspect of earth, on human aspects to institutional aspects to process aspects, and that is when what we have to do. And why I'm very interested in this is that you have selected one of the most important target audiences groups, parliamentarians, in this exercise. So I'm putting a lot more effort into this, because if this works here, it can work in Sri Lanka. Immediately, I have already sent this to the Prime Minister's Secretary, who was a director with me on the Sustainable Development Ministry. He was put into me first into the game. Still young, still hopefully aspirational for transformation. Who knows, right? Okay, next slide, please. Now I'm moving on. Oh, I still couldn't have my special cup of tea, coffee, Denison. That's my first coffee break. Okay. Now I'm taking you back to 2016, 2017. I'm not going to dwell on it. One thing, please, by the way, am I okay? It's a little too heavy, or am I okay? Time I know, but I'll have to take time if you don't mind. Okay.
Any questions?
On the first part of the global stuff. I'm now moving to the local stuff. Please.
I think it's very important. I believe it's very important for us to have the kind of background that people is having. Because
Uchita, let's drop the mister.
Because even before the SDGs were reviewed, and the looking back to Rio 1992, maybe many of you may not realize that that was the turning point for Malaysia as far as marketing was. Before 1992, Rio, as far as he was concerned, every tree hugging environmentalist was anti-government. NGO was no good organization. Today, people like Dr. Denison, people like Dr. Lin, their involvement as an NGO representative is encouraged and embraced by the government. For Uchita's situation, I went to Sri Lanka last year for a environmental ministers meeting. Whenever I spoke about how the government treats us as an NGO, all of them were asking me, why are you speaking with the enemies?
Yeah.
Because every country from Iraq, Iran, all the way to the Solomon Islands, all of them found that the government airlines. And here I was telling them, we have an APPGM-SDG, APPGM-SDG. We work with parliamentarians, we work with EU, we work with the Ministry of Finance. They were shocked. So you have to be very proud that we have moved from no good organization to non-governmental organization. Thank you.
A brilliant intervention. In Sri Lanka, we are still no good.
It's okay. I've learned enough.
I think they are recording, no? So, one second. Denison, what we'll do is, if you don't mind, we'll take a little bit of time in the process to break, in the process to sync. So, the first thing will be a little stretch. We are taking from that to this. So, they are engaged rather than we just doing a lecture.
Chita, thank you so much. Very interesting outline of the global situation. Although the poly crisis thing, I think, came in early 2003, before, I mean, of course, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is already there, but the genocide that's currently happening in the Middle East, I think, has accelerated a lot of issues with regard to global self-confidence of international institutions and all that. But I think that aside, I'm just wondering about the previous slide on financing. Because correct me if I'm wrong, the way you sort of approach it is that if you treat the ecosystem agenda as a linchpin, then you'll be able to address all other issues, including socio-economic ones. I'm not sure if I'm reading it.
Yes, I'll show you at the end our interpretation of how to do it. I'll show you on a methodology.
Right, okay. But am I understanding it correctly?
Yes. So, very quickly to say is that financing people, economics people, people with numbers and interest in the profit end of things, do have a way of viewing the world and its prosperity in a very skewed manner. I know that Denison is involved in social economy process, social economy, that's the term. So there are different alternative models and approaches that are there. I will show you probably the only modeling for a domestic resource mobilization out of the box that has been done. Denison, I forgot to bring other copies of the book and I'm running out of it. I presented to you at my home. So maybe they can have a use at it, but everybody can be sent a digital copy while I'm here. Even today, I'll pass it on, copy of the book, right? And the VNRs and all. I mean, so the slides are yours. I mean, this is global commons. This is not rocket science. This is not individual. Yes, a lot of time and energy has gone into all of this. But please feel free to share, do whatever. Can I move on? This is when Sri Lanka comes into the play as an alternative in the process. Before I go on this, immediately when I was invited by the government to take over as the advisor, UNSCAP heard about this and they invited me to Bangkok for a meeting. Accompanied me was the secretary to the ministry newly appointed. And they said, I don't know, Denison, whether I have ever told you, I think I told you this briefly that day, is that ESCAP was going through a period of huge challenge where Japan, USA support had been withdrawn because of an appointment out of the status quo to the deputy, they call the secretary, secretary, from non-Japanese into the position. and it was not taken well, and the money was going on. They needed someone to navigate the process, and they saw me and then asked whether the minister can be brought in to be the chair of the Asia Pacific APFSD, Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. And before that, there is an, I don't know whether I met you then, and I don't know whether you ever knew, the regional coordination mechanism with SCAP for CSOs, RCEM, was designed by me. The reason people don't want to talk is that I walked out of it because the design architect should not hold positions. That is ethically wrong. Me and Yoklin were the advisors. I asked Yoklin to be as well. But then I don't know whether the RCM is acting on its purpose at the secondary. But before I go into this, the first ever high-level political forum in New York 2016, I think somewhere in June, said Sri Lanka in the Asia Pacific region has the best planning mechanism plans for implementing the SDGs in the world, in the region. This is it. And I'll show you another one. That was just 3 months, February, March, April, May, yeah, somewhere around 4-5 months. This is what I looked at. This is what the country agreed upon. It basically had a whole plan of transition from sensitizing to strategizing to systematizing to transition. I'm saying this because if you all want to do something, understand that transformation does not happen overnight. A transformation requires seriously good transitioning and landing. Sri Lanka's previous president, who was chased out of the country, thought that he's going to change the country overnight. And as because he's the president, he can call anything, any shots, because he's the army man. He was just here to run at the country. People's power shown the first time. I mean, Sri Lankans are known to be softies by at least Indians calls us softies, right? First time we showed the resilience. None of this is there. None of this happened. Look at this. The 4 cornerstones: policy and institutional coherence, strategic intervention, stakeholder engagement, and capacity building and financing. This was done just months after the UN agreement was signed by 193 countries. No one had a blueprint. This is what we agreed upon. Can we go to the next one, please? This was the blueprint. Capacity building, means of implementation and partnership. You can scan anything in 2016 and show me if any country or any institution, including the UN, had ever come up with this. Look at the cornerstones. Look at the cornerstones. And look at the activity plan, how we have. I left on the 24th of February 2018. I only agreed to 1 year. I gave 2 years of my life to the government to do this. Not a trace of this is available, other than the only book printed is still lying in corners with bundles of copies being reprinted without any shame and any responsibility in their office, right? So, by the way, don't worry. I think this will be sent to you and you can do whatever you want with it. What you will see, Denison Sue, is that here in the first area politicians. Without your decision makers, your public service, your political mechanism, you're not going to achieve. And please understand, and the business leaders need to be in sync in a single country. You just can't have business pulling it to one side, CSOs pulling it to the center or one side, and the government trying to, balance it to one side that they want. So be aware of this. This is part and parcel of how things can be visualized in an idealistic manner and can go wrong. In trying to do things, you come from the government as well to know the challenges of government is also enormous. Right, let's go to the next slide. I'm running fast to get to the point. How many, this I will explain. These are SDGs. I tell you, nothing else is SDGs. Has anyone seen this kind of an analysis of how sustainable development has conceptualized in the world? Okay, so let me give a very quick run, which I didn't expect to do today. The first time that the world started embarking on, in a very abstract understanding, was the first Human Environment Conference, the first UN summit as they call. The interesting topic was, it was human environment. Has nothing to do with sustainable development. By that time, there were other theses that were coming up. Donald Miller's systems thinking and analysis, if you can have the book. Then 20 years later, now here somewhere you see the World Commission on Environmental Development, the Brundtland Commission report for our common future. That is where sustainable development starts getting first time defined as responsibilities to the future generations. Please understand, it's a halfway. Half, is it down? Yeah. I think I'm not screaming into the mic, I'm talking into the mic. I'm not only fast.
Some of us got built this mic in.
Yeah, my friends say that I have, from previous generations, I have swallowed sound system into mine, right? So my genetics are sound built.
Might say so.
Even if, huh?
Neighborhood is listening when I'm.
Yeah, that's why I closed the door. I was self-conscious that, yeah. Okay, guys, so then comes 1992, where I started getting involved. I think I was the youngest to get in, and on the steering committee. That is when it was on environment and development, between environment and development, trying to find here to here. So sustainable development will have two understandings from the beginning: intergenerational equity, between generations, how to utilize their resources, and intra-generational, which the Brundtland Commission does not have. It is within a generation of different constituencies, groups having the same level of consumption ability or ability to prosper. Now you see huge differences of equity in the world. So it can't be just only the future generations, but the current generation. Am I audible on the mic? Because I think I'm screaming now, right? I'm worried about my. Then the 2002 Rio Plus 12 and Rio Plus 20. But please understand, what do we have? How many goals? SDGs? 17 goals. Into how many targets? 169. So 1, 2, 3, the larger ones are a mapping by David, no, not David O'Connor. This was one of the first from UN. There's a planning division. I can't remember the guy's name, right? So these are the 17 SDGs, and these are the 169 targets. And what it means is that this came about 6 months after everything was signed up, to show that these are not linear targets. These have impacts on each other, interlinkages. So social, I'll show you something how we interpreted this as well. So look at this and how the indicators came about. It took about 2 years for the indicator framework to come up later. So please understand, I have been very mindful of not saying this too much, is that SDGs were not developed on a very scientific rationale. These were a completely political rationale. SDG 12, sustainable consumption and production, cuts across everything. Why is it there? Because Europe wanted it, OECD wanted it, European Union wanted it for their agenda. So we were part of this process behind the scene, knowing what has happened for the last 30 plus years, and we were in the circles, and we know this, it never comes out. So much of money has been put in by regions, by constituencies to get certain things on the agenda. Show me where trade becomes compromised in the world or tackled in the world in the SDG. Show me anywhere. Trade is kept separate out of this agenda. So WTO has its own way, while rest of the entire world comes into agenda 2030 agenda. So we have to be very, very mindful of the kind of process that we are in and going ahead. Let's move on. Yeah, I keep on moving out on the other way. Sri Lanka. Oh, I can't do that. That is not going to happen today. I told that I'm going to go slow and I'll have to show certain things. I'm just starting, right? This is, you saw certain diagrams. This, your 169 targets. The first thing that I told Sri Lanka was that your 17 goals you can't achieve. There's nothing that you can do with 17 goals. You just can't tick boxes like you did with the MDGs and say, we have achieved SDG 1, we have SDG. It doesn't work that way. These are thematic baskets. I read about the 5 or whatever on SDG 2. This is the mistake MDGs made. MDG whatever on water and sanitation. They said that Sri Lanka had achieved 97%. Sri Lanka had reported to ESCAP that we have achieved 97% or 93% of sanitation targets by 2015 on MDGs. SDGs come in, it dropped down to 46 like this. Immediately, within just seconds of the monitoring changes, indicators change. And my daughter who's seated here was going to school then, the largest Buddhist, whatever school in girls' school in Asia or whatever they call it, very proudly call it. I said, come with me in heart of Colombo, go to the toilet and show me sanitation. Forget about the plantations, forget about the poor rural villages, right? And the general hospital, right? So I'm going to go. This mapping came out very differently. This is the first time Sri Lanka had ever known that we had 425 central government institutions under 51 cabinet ministries at that time. The National Planning Department did not know, the Parliament did not know, we had to do this size of research that we did. And I'll give you a very quick understanding as to how the interlinkages work. SDG 1 is about eradicating poverty, 7 targets, 128 agencies under 39 ministries in 26 Sri Lanka had. Just understand they don't understand when they are budgeting, right? Climate change, 5 targets, 93 agencies, 28 ministries. You think that they work together? Yeah. Then, yeah, how many? Yeah, that is because the budget does it. If you have sit down with a budget process, because that is what I was wanting to talk, it's a parliamentary process. Your budgeting process is like this, no? You have the poverty people here. This is my money. You have the environment people here. This is my money. You have somebody else here. This is my money. At the end of the day, I don't know whether how your system works. Anywhere into June, July, not a single ministry would have expenditure of 35% of the budget. Come October, before the November budget, no one has not spent more than less than 85%. Procurement. Corruption is engraved in the middle, right? Please.
Because we're talking about so many agencies involved, there was a situation. Paul Ramam and myself attended a meeting at EPU with I think that time was director of budget, and he was asking us, why should we give you X amount of million ringgit to run projects and activities that are already being handled by 3,000 programs worth hundreds of billions of ringgit? And Rama's reply, if I'm not mistaken, is, sir, if all the programs are working, you don't need us. After that, he was very quiet. So the problem here very clearly shows, and Pani, you brought it up, it's all silo.
Exactly.
And I like to quote Tan Sri Rafira as this: in Malaysia, it's not silo, it's chimney. Because a silo, you can have 3-4 people running around. In a chimney, fella drops and he dies, and nobody knows.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So let me continue into the one last on this. I'll give you examples as to how dangerous what you're saying is. This is SDG 1.5 that talks about addressing resilience from a poverty eradication point of view. This is 13.1 on climate-based resilience. See the number of institutions. Target 45 agencies, 21 ministries, 31 agencies under 14 ministries. None of them work together. And what happens is that you put in money to poverty, and when the floods come, takes away everything that you have invested and creates new level of poverty. And my example, I was told by my friends yesterday that when I came to Kale yesterday, you all had flash floods, because every time I'm at home, there are flash floods, right? Okay, so that part is gone. Let's go to the next one, please. Now, I'm going to give you one more reality. Probably this is something that is going to help you. I put it in the morning as well from something else. This is how a national budget reflects in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a 3-tiered governance model. A central government, which goes from central to district to local in a very different way. Then you have a provincial government, which has 9 provinces. Then you have what is called the local authorities, local government, which has, I think, 300 and something, I can't remember exactly, 41 or whatever. Look at the budgeting, how it reflects. Are you familiar with the principle of subsidiarity? Okay. The principle of subsidiarity means that you make your decisions at the smallest level in a country, a community level. If the community can make its decisions, the center facilitates. So that is what you all are trying to do. You are trying to look at where the bottom issues are and whether there's capacity for them to do self-help. Otherwise, you facilitate. In a way, from what I understand also. Now look at how the central government budget is. The national budget, national central government takes about 88.7% of the total pie of money and then promises 9.5, but the provinces tells me they get about 5.5. And the local government, which is the largest ground-based, is about 1.8, controlled by the provincial councils, controlled by the central government. So, on constitution, whatever you write, on your statutes, whatever you write about power to the people, democracy, people are supreme, leave no one behind. You're telling stories to those who are deprived. You're creating movies to those in the gallery who are giving their whistles, hurrahs. And we are going to have another general election on the 14th of November in our country. Right? And I know that you're coming into that. I just wanted to leave on the question as to how money, finances defines transformation or does not define transformation. A parliamentary review is going to be very mindful of this. Can we go to the next one? I'm getting into the methodology now. I'm going to, before I take a toilet break with your permission, very quickly. I have stories about going to the toilet, but I'm not going to repeat them. I'm going to use the toilet. My only excuse is that I'm a diabetic, so please bear with me. I'm going to leave this with you. This was sent to me by one of the professors, senior medical professors, who's in the global science thing. The UN Scientific Committee's recognition of the voluntary people's review is, this is how it goes. The VPR methodology and process has reviewed the highest recognition by the UN scientific community as well. The joint statement on harnessing scientific evidenced decision making to accelerate the SDGs to the first ever Science Day held to accelerate progress on the SDGs that was co-authored by the Stockholm Environment Institute, the UN Development Programme, the International Science Council, and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Jeffrey Sachs' network, appointed by UN, has recognized the value to the world of the voluntary people's review in Sri Lanka. It states in page 5. Encourage independent evaluation. Civil society and research organizations should hold national and local governments accountable for their SDG commitments. One way to do this is by undertaking systematic reviews of the impacts of interventions now underway, such as the Voluntary People's Review in Sri Lanka, and embedded mechanisms for learning and adjusting in decision making and policy planning. This came this year. I believe you were, Denison, in New York for the HLPF. I've started saying no to all of that for the last 4 or 5 years. I would value this over a participation in HLPF personally myself, not everybody, right? So again, I value this more. Why I'm saying this is because you're going to see one of the most in-depth, information-based and people-based at the same time methodology existing in the world, which is what I'm going to navigate you through. Because from before then coming and meeting the three of you and having that lunch, which was very kindly sponsored by our friend, showed me that this has not just a report. Your intervention or your initiative seems to be having more than thought, but the potential of body mass and potential of high impact, if it is done well, and it can be a prototype to the world. So I'm going to leave you before I come to the methodology. Give me, where's it depends. The toilet is here. It won't take long. Okay, so this is when I'm now getting into the methodology. Methodology, which is process and content both. This is the critical part of stuff. First part, all countries went through a process by now on the VPRs, Voluntary National Reviews. I'm trying to address your concern, also your question as well.
What is it sometimes the issue in government doesn't get stake, right, for this? So, like what basically use an analogy of personal profit, they follow.
Okay.
If they follow,
Oh, no, it's something else.
if they follow, if you go with that thing about personal profit, is if they follow the SDG, they get more popular, better chance of staying in power. Sure. If we try to use personal profit as a
Okay.
something to get them
Okay.
invested.
Everything that I said before, when Sri Lanka for the first time created a cabinet portfolio, a ministry for sustainable development, basically was on cashing on the goodwill of a nation towards a UN system where Sri Lanka's human rights record was bad. And they wanted to have a different angle to create a positive global image, international image, and why they scouted me. Because I was known to the UN system, people knew me, I had influence, whatever, and the government had no mechanism to counter the human rights challenges that were coming up. One reason. I would have avoided this if not for the good question. The second part is that all over the world, in my assessment, the most immediately latched on stakeholder in most of the countries were government officials, not the civil society, not the private sector. The government, for whatever the reason, the public officials, not the politicians, right? The public officers felt that and because they are run by various funding regimes that brings in money into countries and restructuring their financial allocations. The second part that happened was that a very small group of more powerful, understanding politicians did realize that if they are to navigate countries like Sri Lanka to have a positive connotation, they had to align with the SDGs and showcase that they are doing something. So the branding is more about that. The last part is that whether they can get elected through this. How many people in any country in the world, percentage wise, would know what SDGs are? The US Congress, at the end of, I think, Bush second, who was a Bush wildfire, I think, they stated that at the end of the process, no one knew what Agenda 21 was. And they went into Agenda 2030 without knowing that. So please understand, while we are in this room with trying to talk about SDGs, the issues that normal people anywhere, not grassroots level, not village level, but urban level, they don't talk SDGs. They talk their issues. They don't even call it poverty. They will say that I don't have money, I are poor. We have these problems. We have health problems. We have problems of finding nutrition. Somebody is cutting our forest. You see? And there's medicine, toxic stuff coming in. These are very different. How the planning people in the world would look at things is different. So they live on a higher cloud looking like this, and from the clouds when you look at it's different. So the problem is this: they thought that the SDGs will get them to their higher levels, and I can show you how the people's agendas and the UN agendas and government agendas sit in different places. What we are trying to do here is to bring the different agendas as close as possible to the center.
They say because it sounds like also a language, because the way you're saying the SDGs, for example, is the labeling is nice and all that, but you try to explain it down to grassroots level is a bit
hard.
Because you said poverty, but you said they poor. You're trying to get them to give you poverty. You're trying to get you food.
Very hard.
There's no connection with explaining it in the simpler grassroots, more personal.
So what I like about what Dr. Su and team is doing is, I think they are going into the people, to the communities, and trying to, one, understand what those issues are and interpret it from that to a policy level as well, if I'm not mistaken. This is no joke. This is no joke. So the conduit in between is in the room. The intermediary is in the room. So my audience is you. My audience is you, the facilitators, the ones who are tying down the bottom end to the top end. So this is a very technocratic session with techno language in it. So as I said, the initial part took a lot more time than I thought, because I asked about certain graphs, certain information that was still not in the room. So I had to take time before it said that was the context. So this is where the commitment comes. I gave it 2 years and I said no, and I walked, well, I left, we left, and the problem was, I will also make this historical reference in the room, because I think Denison, you guys are undertaking something of a responsibility, not just an initiative, a responsibility of creating something on behalf of someone else, two constituencies, the parliamentarians and the people, right? That is what I'm seeing. So your responsibilities are not one way. Trying to do that, my assumptions, I can write it down at tomorrow in the strategy session with you all, is that there's going to be a lot of uneasiness of explaining here and there and ultimately presenting them so that both parties start, tangoing together. It's not easy. What?
If the lofty goals you're saying is the balloon, the people you're saying grassroots are the basket, we are the ropes trying to bring up.
Whatever that works for you. Whatever that works for you. Yeah.
So you talk to them, there's a picture for them.
Sure. So what we did was this. The problem was suddenly the government officials started finding it hard to implement transformation. Initially, they thought that, oh, wow, SDGs are here. There's going to be a lot of money. Politicians thought there's going to be a lot of money. Administrators thought that there's going to be so easy packaged models coming from the UN. Suddenly, they found within about 1 year that it is so complicated, it's so complex. The undoing part of UN did not understand what they were doing, believe me. We were there in the parts on the corridors of doing this, right? These are different diplomats coming and putting their heads together and saying, we want this, we want that, all of this. Why not 10? Why not 20? Why 17 goals? Why does sustainable consumption and production come into the play? There's a lot of politics that went into, global politics that went into. When it comes to the countries, there was no, please come in, if you are in the correct lobby. This is the airport. I see your bag. What we did was we understood time was right and that all the plans are good. This is something very different. All the planning was good. The implementation required political commitment. Political commitment is the only thing that will make sure that the public service delivery mechanism or the public sector can do things and where the people can get benefited, right? So the public sector, is there anyone from the public sector in the room, or I'm talking to civil society or independents? You're from the public sector? Local government or something? Government, public sector, right? Then you will understand that there are different ends of the entire process, sticks that each one holds. So a methodology starts with, probably this might be the way that, I don't know how you are working, how we look at it is, the 17 goals, whether we can have 17 communities of knowledge, outreach, ground-based together. I'm going to show you at the end coming how this works. We do not work in silos with either CSOs, either government, either scientific community, academia, children, youth. We don't work that way. And the process is led mainly now by young professionals. Completely by young professionals, and I'm glad to see a good crop of mix in the room also. And they have been built for the last 2016 onwards. The mappings that I showed you were done by an independent group brought by me into the government, not the other way around. Because if you look at how the minds of when you are younger, the head works is a little bit more without clutter. So when you bring in new, innovative stuff, they would grab on and they would go to either technology, either they would go to another modeling process, which requires, so there was a serious amount of scenarios modeling that goes into, and I see how your process of information collection needs to go into scenarios modeling, which we'll talk. The thing goes on is that we have looked at different platforms. So you are looking at today two different platforms, the morning and afternoon session. The afternoon session has lot more clarity. It's CSOs. Different groups of independent, non-profit kind of organizations, which may not have a uniformity in it, but you can see that the thought processes are very closer in that. The parliamentarians group that you are working on, you are not the parliamentarians. That is the first part of it. You are an undertaker for the parliamentarians to enable for their constituencies. When I say undertaker, I'm not talking undertaker on the other side of the process. I'm thinking of a because I don't want to look at Denison's face when I call undertaker. No, I call undertakers of an assignment, right? So again, the conduit from here to here. The process again that we created. This is the difference that we did. Is we created what is called a SDG transformation lab. I will explain at the very last slide of mine as to how we are going to work, hopefully with you on that.
Okay, can I intervene for a while? We have refreshments outside, so anyone who wants to go get a cup of tea or coffee outside and then bring it back in, and we will continue straight.
Okay. This is something that you will have to pay extraordinary attention to, and including Denison. No, this is the one that I need to get full attention. Right. First part. A methodology, evolving a methodology is unique to any process, any context that you are in, and any process that you are envisioning to do. The process that we were in was Denison directly responding to the lack of methodology for what VNRs globally. Look at what the HLPEF says as to what a voluntary national review is about. Just a checklist only. It has no methodology of data collection. It has no methodology of data analysis. It has no methodology of data verification and presentation. And it does not say how you look at the progress rather than each and everyone presenting their own way. And I think your experience is same to us, that UNDP would give 10,000 US dollars to a country, a consultant who will write a report. Writing a report is not a VNR. A voluntary national review is about taking stock as to what has been happening since 1st of January 2016 in transforming your systems, processes and activities, which means that your country is moving away from the old unsustainable processes to sustainable processes and giving a near accurate, at least, snapshot that is verified by your data system, that your constituencies, your stakeholders representing the country. It is not about a tourism presentation or tourism promotion presentation of your country to the UN. I'm sure there is a you, I don't know who else has been into VNR presentation sessions. Not even other governments are listening. And do you know that the questions from the audience are stage managed? The UN Secretariat will negotiate with a few countries to ask the other country a few questions that the country wants and the Secretariat wants. I don't know whether Denison knew this.
Friendly countries.
Countries who are nanny goats. You just follow the thing. So there is no investigation into. Now this is something that you asked me yesterday on the first question. What the voluntary national review is the only reporting mechanism or the delivery mechanism of the high level political forum in the entire process, where countries from 2016 to 2030 will get a minimum of 2 cycles of presentation. The high level political forum of United Nations under UN ECOSOC replaces what is called the Commission for Sustainable Development coming out of the 1992 or something. The 20 yes, right? Agenda 21 and creating the Commission for Sustainable Development, which was about 56 countries commissioned every year in a cycle, and they came out of with nothing. There was no decision making power. So they termed high level political forum, and the only instrument is not a national review. It's a voluntary national review. That is where the things started going wrong. Why? Because the UN system can't hold governments other than they say when it comes to human rights, they have punitive measures. So what does countries do? They send their own report. Who writes a report? A consultant writes a report. Other than few countries in the world. So Niti Aayog in India was given a new mandate to create this agency to take hold of all the data and all the powers to do it. But Niti Aayog, I think you know that Niti Aayog is highly criticized for their approach. But they do a certain degree of work. Must Finland, country like Finland would take it differently. Now, when we started on this, after all the hard work we have done, and this is a historical statement I'm making in this forum, is that as the chief negotiator for Sri Lanka, when Sri Lanka was coined by the UN plenary high-level political forum as the highest level of planning of implementation for implementation on the SDGs, I decided that Sri Lanka will not present its VNR in 2017 because Sri Lanka was planning only and we had not taken stock. So I made a notice and the government agreed with me that 2017 we need to take stock and 2018 we will go into presenting it. When we went into 2018, I was not the chief negotiator. I was not the one to develop the VNR. Somebody else was done. UNDP came and hired somebody else to do it. 1, there was no data collection. 2, there was no consultation with stakeholders. 3, the report had nothing to do with SDGs. It was the same old reporting that a country does for any conference. So I had to convene a group of people and organizations immediately, and we decided on creating what is called the Sri Lanka Stakeholder SDG platform. And please understand that we never limited it to civil society. We made sure that the government officials are part of it. So the President's Secretariat would be part of the participation. All the provincial governments would be inviting us to have their stakeholder meetings because the government VNR was not doing anything. And they knew me. I had trained all the provincial planning directors by then. So they invited me to their provinces. The chief secretary would invite me. Today, that is the way we do it. But then we bring in additional people, academics and researchers from all the universities. And we give the main thrust of the responsibility to young professionals, younger people who will be responsible for the outreach of all constituencies, collection of data, analysis of data with the experts. When I say experts, there are 2 kinds that we see. One are the more academically oriented, research oriented people coming from universities and research centers. The others are, many of them come from activism, like many of you who have years and years of experience with people, with issues, who have information as well. Data has different sides. Data in a national or a public document would be verified data, mainly coming from the National Statistical Agency's verification, and secondary, a government institution. Thirdly, a UNO global body. For them, an academic publication would come next, where information is. So verification of a data is important. For us, data is information. So we start with the government, we go to the other stuff, other constituencies, and we conduct our own verification. Let's say that you all go to the different constituencies, so that you all collect information. Information, as till it's put into numbers and tabulated and verified in a modular manner, does not become a, and get it stamped by the authority, doesn't become a statistic. For us, we are conducting independent review, and we take anything that comes our way that can be verified and justified. So when we present a fact could say the government data says this, but an alternative research report says this. And then we go take 4 or 5 experts in the field, let's say it's wildlife or oceans. We will bring in them from the different things, because if you take one expert, he will give you one linear understanding. So you put them in, but you have we always have the researchers. This is what I was very interested in you. We have a bunch of trained researchers who will know the numbers, who will know what X, Y, Z says from person to institutions, and present it in a group. Sometimes we'll break the individuals apart and ask them what they think, so that we don't put them into a situation where they compromise. So when we collect the final information, no, you had not gone to the one that I wanted to say. Next one. Yeah. All right. When I'm going to explain this, because this is the one that has never, for the first time, been tested in 2022 and proven. Well, Stockholm Environment Institute has a -3 to +3. We have a -5 to +5. I will explain that. Now, this is the important part, probably, that will interest to your process. We had a methodology which called a micro assessment and a macro assessment. Please pay attention to this, because this is the one, if you get it, we can discuss further. A micro assessment, the way we looked at it, is the only kind of assessment that is happening on the VNRs, even in the best of countries and the UN Secretary General Scientific Committee, which means the 169 targets against the 17 goals measured by the 244 global indicators. Countries were supposed to localize the indicators. Most countries have not done so. There are proxies. I don't know how Malaysia has done it. Have you all localized the targets and indicators? I don't think so. Yeah. At a national scale, localizing means that you have different targets, additional targets, or redefined targets, and for those targets, indicators that are unique to that. Exactly. That is where I'll show you that also. Exact point. If you don't have localized, now say, first part is the national indicators for global targets are different. You can't measure. Are we okay on this? Please stop me. This is not the easiest on earth. I will explain why it is not easy. The global targets are universal. Now, say, Cambodia. Who has the mines? Minefields, Cambodia. All the mines, the boom from the US. Cambodia has a 18 goal landmine. I think it's Cambodia, no? Vietnam or Cambodia? One of them. Vietnam, I think. One of them. I think maybe Vietnam. I'm not sure, right?
So you allow Vietnam like the landmines, right?
Yeah, but one of them has an 18 goal unique to them, and they have the indicators. Only country that I have seen doing that. But then, if you go to, I'll show you the local report from Sri Lanka also. When you go to a national level, your poverty to what poverty is in multidimensional poverty is called in Europe and US is different. In Asia, within Asia, South Asia to Southeast Asia to Far East Asia is different. You're not going to measure the same way that the World Bank says of $2.50. We are still on $1.25 or going down. Right? So, this is how we look at it, a micro assessment based on the 169 targets clustered into the 17 goals, 244, because we are looking at the progress on goals with localizing and the indicators. This is the first part of it. I'll show you the second part. No one has done so far, which worries me that even the 12% that the Secretary General Scientific Committee talks about being on track, I don't think it's true. And we have challenged them because the macro assessment, I will show you how the macro on integration, coherence, mainstreaming, localizing, financing, and the transformation are big building blocks that we are looking at. These are not about goal 1, target 1, indicator 1.1. These are about different targets, goals and targets cross-cutting each other, where leveraging is being done either by finance, either by political decisions or whatever. And they can go very different ways depending on. Say, if somebody wants to leverage social protection over economic growth, the input is different. The input is different. This is why I said this session is a little, more serious, and the other one was softer. The previous one. So this is how it goes. Just have a look at this. I'm going to explain this to you. This I think we are okay with. The first one, the micro assessment. And the micro assessment you all will be doing. I saw 5 goals being done. So we will talk about this tomorrow. Because I think how things can, simplification and from complexity and the challenge, the dangers of leaving out elements is something that you will have to weigh. We will discuss that in strategy. The map, yeah. Please, the mic, please.
With chair SDG, we always struggle with SDG is that we don't have the figures, and then for SDG, the figures complete in terms of number. But for us, it's more of a quality data. So if we do want to measure these rate and also the skills, I think that we do also need to take consideration how to do that.
Macro assessment. I'll show you that. Macro. So the micro, you're right. The micro assessment on the targets indicators are simply about what a status number would be. So poverty is measured by countries in different modules. The statistical agency will look at what is their module. Now say we are now looking at something at the end, maybe I'll talk about it just briefly, about natural capital valuation and how the Department of Census and Statistics is looking at it into the system of national accounts, right? So you will have to play a little role in understanding this. So -5 to +5, just keep this in mind. This has never been attempted. Show me if you can anywhere. A +5 is when a very high progress. You're familiar with Jeffrey Sachs's SDG rating. It does not have this. It has either you're stagnant, either you're progressing, or you're decreasing, something like that. But it uses a very funny kind of a information system which does not go, it can't go deep. It's a global thing. So they'll have to revise. And when you go down, we also made the mistake in 2018 not looking at a negative. Now, example, Sri Lanka post-COVID and a very poor governance system ultimately started breaking one of the most stable nations in South Asia, probably the most stable nation in South Asia, with no huge no big poverty in the country. We never had poverty as such that you see in pockets of India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or like that. We never had that. We have poverty, poor people in different. We don't have that kind of poverty, but you can see that nutrition to desperation started going down. So what happens? Let's say that a country has had a normal level of well-being and it goes down. You just can't call it zero. It's a negative because its negative impacts on the progress on other stuff. So we started giving discounted rates, negative rates. I mean, there must be other people with numbers, statistics in the room. I am not one of them. I know exactly. So I'm not a numbers person. I'm talking numbers to numbers people. So I'm just telling you, right? I'm not. I have one here. But this is important. Does not mean because you are doing an independent review that you can write anything you want. Don't do that. This is one of the things that you see from civil society organizations across the world, writing anything and calling it an independent report. All emotional stuff, very easy to write, political statements. No one reads anything, they listen, to be honest. You can't write big reports. You need to have executive summary. Within the first few paragraphs, you need to capture the audience. Like this, a government official or a UN official will not pick up anything if your first statement is not appealing. Throws. Volumes of documents are just thrown. People think that, oh, we have done this. Such a lot of bragging, self-bragging. All right, that monkey praising its own tail is not working in the world. Right? Basically, what we need to do, we are serious people in the room. Right? We want to do good, make transformation happen. Right? So that is what we are going to do. This keep in mind. We are having five main blocks. I will come to the more qualitative analysis. This is where systems change, integration and mainstreaming review, political commitment, policy and institutional coherence review, continuous assessment, monitoring, evaluation, follow-up and review. Fourth one, leaving no one behind, localizing, subnational level and stakeholder engagement review. Fifth one is means of implementation, financing, technology and accountability review. Qualitative, quantitative together. Qualitative analysis and presentation and justification is hard. You know that better than me. But if you don't do qualitative and stick to numbers, you're giving somebody else a scoreboard into a story. We don't need other people's scoreboards. You do both and then you come out with it. Let's go to the next one quickly. Now is the challenge. You are not going to see this too much, but let me run through. This is our own scoreboard. This is our own measuring scale of 30 on the 5 big ticket items of a macro level analysis. I'll give you an example. Policy coherence including mainstreaming and integration. Are we familiar with mainstreaming and integration? The concept of mainstreaming and integration which came with the SDGs. Are we familiar? No? Okay. The main responsibility of any government who promised, 193 governments, who promised to implement the SDGs and embark on a transformation had to do had a primary responsibility. One is called mainstreaming into national policy frameworks of the SDGs. Say you have an economic policy framework in the country. You bring the SDGs relevant components and mainstream it into the already existing policy frameworks and redesigning. One, integration. Integration means the 4 key dimensions that we talk about, the 3 environmental, social, economic, and then we bring governance. We discussed this that day also, and I'm going to get more serious on the governance part of it. Governance is the enabler. Without governance, we see that the environment, social, economic is not working in the world. So what you do is that you look at not only economic policies, you not only look at social policies, You not only look at environmental policies, but you start looking at the integration of all three of these and the governance parts of it, of redesign of policy and policy frameworks and regulations. By now, the countries, all countries should have had a total new policy framework process in the world, and a very few. That is why I told at the first slide on the contextualizing what Finland is doing about saying this is our responsibility on climate change. Others are not doing a lot. Okay. So we can run through this, Sue and Denison and all. This is something. Now, let me give you another part of it. Leaving no one behind. I think this is something common to all of you. Leave no one behind. That is the founding principle of SDGs. Look at what we have said. Multi-stakeholder partnerships are available or not. You talk about this. Private sector awareness and engagement. Is it there in the country? Citizens' participation and civil society engagement. Please understand that civil society organizations and community and people are also not the same. They're not the same. They think they're the same. They're not the same. They think that they represent. Sometimes, most of the time, they don't. Right? So I come from that. I can say that. In the evening, I'll say that as well. Public awareness and capacity delivery by CSO stakeholders. Then comes the means of implementation. So this is a dashboard that you can create. We'll work on this because you're already collecting the issues. I can see that you're bringing in the already. It's like this. You collect a lot of stuff. Then what you need is something to filter it. You need a filter. The filter is the tough part. The filter is the think tank. The brains who have been out there and bringing in stuff, right? Who can say, okay, we have XYZ looking similar. How do we cluster them together? But then, once we cluster it together, how do you not lose the smaller components? There's no point if you lose the smaller components. Sometimes a smaller component is more vital in a particular community or a locality or a process or a system than the macro. It defines the macro. So that is people in the ground, people who are looking at the analysis will say a third party can't do that. Third party can facilitate. The real people down there will say no. In Sarawak, in X community in Sarawak, it's like this. In Y community in Sarawak, it's this. But in another Penang, it's this. So we'll have to talk about that. So all of this and whatever is a dashboard that a parliamentarian's review. The constituency is really going deeper. The constituency of parliamentarians, their interest would go deeper into their stuff. So it has to reflect not the macros alone. When I say macros, it's a terminology of saying not the linear targets to indicators. Are we? Yes, please. Yeah. First part of the process is we have looked at what is happening around the world, not Sri Lanka. Okay, example, FISD, Action for Sustainable Development. When I did the 2018 first ever voluntary people's review, FISD said we are interested in replicating this across the world, all CSOs, because they were supposed to be the key focal CSO for the world. You know them, Ollie and them, right? So first thing is they took up I think the most primitive approach we had taken, spoke to the big NGOs in Brazil, in Brussels, I think in Delhi, like that. And they figured out that this is hard process. So they came up with a 10 kind of a pointer, not on the micros. Now this is very funny. So this is something that you might be interested, you all will be interested in the work. The civil society organizations have intrinsically found reporting on the 116 targets using the indicators very hard because they don't collect data and they don't work with either scientists or other organizations who have data. They work with their constituencies, and constituencies will have certain amount of information more than data. So they immediately said that that is the responsibility of government, which is true. But if you're going to counter, how can you say a data is wrong or analysis is wrong if you don't have alternative information? So the part, Denison, to answer your first question is that not only the VNRs are at fault, the alternative shadow reports are only looking at the critique. We were not looking at the critique. We were looking at what is missing to provide it to the nation and the world. We are not interested in just doing a critique and going back home. We were looking at what is missing in the UN system of the countries, and then we were looking at spotlight reports. Now there are good spotlight reports like the what is the group Yoklin and in New York that they do South Corporation, is it? No, not TWN. TWN has not got involved in the SDGs as far as I know to that effect. Yeah. Right. So some of the shadow reports are very political. So they will take 1, 2, 3 kind of issues. Now say they are simply good on trade analysis, global trade analysis. Right? Then you will find some groups who work around the Geneva process, good on the human rights process, which has more concrete, punitive arrangements. And SDGs, sustainability, climate change, none of that has not evolved to that, right? So even the independent action is not very focused on or to the point. So it becomes narratives, Denison, more than deeper investigations to analysis to review. Those are commentaries. So you have to be very careful which one you want to be. In my opinion, you are not engaged in a commentary. You are engaged in a voluntary people's review. A review is based on information, data, from gathering from the constituencies and the stakeholders, analyzing them with them and independently, and giving a status quo with the foresight strategy for making things right. Looking at a gaps analysis, conducting a gaps analysis, looking at where the gaps are in the system, in the processes, in the programs, and then trying to give a set of recommendations as to how to put things together. At least the first part of it, right? So you are setting stage for the decision makers of a nation. Now, the parliamentary group normally will set the tone of voice, trends for the bureaucracy to start putting them into modules and implementing. That is how it happens. So the constituencies are the ones who will tell their parliamentarians as to these are the top trending issues for us. This is our priorities. I heard the term of issues mapping, prioritization, and then analysis and reporting, or something that you said, the 3 that you were talking about. Exactly. But where does it take you? Towards taking somebody else in a journey, facilitating somebody else in a journey. So this is something that we'll talk about. Go to the next slide, please. Uchita, please. Yeah.
If I may, so in Malaysia,
Yeah.
to ask about different kinds of communities. And for our issue mapping, we usually, because of the principle of our SDG, we're talking about leaving no one behind. So the communities that we tend to go to, it's not only just the poor, but also the minorities. The argument with minorities, that is the representational of these minorities. So if we are talking about indigenous communities are so small, how is it that you're going to represent it? And you're talking about SDG as a global kind of agenda. So that's always that kind of arguments over there. So if we look at the assessments, which are quite comprehensive, but I wonder how is it that we can be able to use these indicators to gauge these kind of differences, the minorities differences, and also the historical different the contextual of that the context itself. Although you did mention it from the very beginning about the linear process, looking at this macro assessment, I still can't help to see that there's also a linear process thinking that this we should have a certain kind of engagement with the CSO, the stakeholders, and also the politicians. But if we talking about parliamentarians and then they are supposed to represent the minorities at their own constituencies, then again, then my questions about the representations. Yeah.
I thought I will do this tomorrow, but let me get quickly into that. And evening, I will be touching on the multi-stakeholder processes. One is that if you focus, there are two processes that comes into my mind for you. One is a report. Report is only a representation of a summary of what you have come up. A report is not going to do all, but a report can be very creatively designed if you bring in case studies. You want to highlight a particular community which stands out in a very different situation, you highlight it. Sometimes you will be surprised that some of these so thinking rare incidents or situations may be representative of many others. Let's say there's a 1%, 2%, 0.5% ratio of a representation of an issue. What would be a 0.5% of your, what is your population? National population is how many million? 30 million. So for 30 million, 1% is what? 3 million, right? No, 10. 300,000. 300,000, 0.5% is 150,000 people. So this is the, do you look at it from a very westernized point of view of 150,000 people in the south versus what happened during tsunami when 5 tourists got perished. If 5 people, Britishers were in the Hikkadua beach in Sri Lankan perished. Rest of the thousands were insignificant. How do you think people feel about it? 150 people are 100% of whatever. They are very important. They are significant. You know the red list of species that are going away on Earth. You see, we take it for granted that these species are just disappearing. What the hell? Some of the people have dedicated their life scientists to a single species on Earth, a single little species on Earth. And if you listen to them, they will tell you how important it is for the balance of the Earth system. You know? Yeah. So let's cut it into a further 10% of the 150. 15 people. Where does the principle of leaving no one behind comes in? Leave no one behind is the central principle of anything. So it's a policy call. It's a call by you all as the facilitators, right? My take on it is that parliamentarians, there will be some parliamentarians in a general point of view who look at a national scale will say, why the hell are you talking about this amount of people or this kind of thing? You try to leave it out and see your constituency's voice against it. Just see how much it's going to be. So, Denison, either your document is going to be big, like this, or your document is going to be like this, or your document is going to be like this. Yeah.
Comment. I know tomorrow we might do this more.
Yes. That's why I said tomorrow should be, because I'm being asked three questions.
Let me just say that means, in a sense, our focus is from mapping reports, which are the assessment. It has a constituency bias. and it has leaving no one behind.
Absolutely.
Now, what we could do is say, this is the official statistics that is saying there is no problem. Water is not a problem. But anyone who went to the Kawasan in Muka or in the one will know water is a major crisis. So what Dr. Subi can do is, in different examples, we can highlight an example of Sabah or Sarawak or Kelantan to give differentiations. We might not be in every tajuk or topic do the diversity of micro, but at least make sure there's something on gender, indigenous people, urban poor, some specific indigenous communities of Sabah, Sarawak, the forest-based communities, or urban communities, or majority community that also faces like Kelantan. It's the writing style. I think these are some things tomorrow we have to finalize, because many of you are going to help write it over the next few months. So if we get it very clear what you are going to write, not new research, it's already from the mapping reports that we have, it's rewriting. Ujita, my only question
Can you go to
is,
previous?
let's say if we take SDG 3,
Health.
now do we follow
Previous,
this 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, which is normally the reporting process, or we take only what we feel in SDG 3 is relevant to our mapping lab? Because many of the indicators, so we are not repeating Dawson's report or EPU's report. We are only repeating what people told us and what people felt were important things. So the assessment is based on that.
Yes.
We, I think, maybe have to do methodology write-up
Yeah.
to qualify
Yeah.
what we are saying.
Yeah.
If not, I think they will
Yes.
discredit.
One thing that I'll show you before one of the last slides, I'll come to that and show you, is you don't need to, stuff that is not printed can go digital. A larger compendium can go digital. I will show you what we are doing for the government now, and creating a clearinghouse and a review mechanism.
Actually, ours is all documented in reports. It's all in
Yeah.
form. So maybe the footnotes and references
Yeah.
are now important.
Yeah, I will show you something.
Of our work. So if you did Tanjung
Exactly.
Kara or Kuala Langat, then that footnote needs to be there. You don't need to repeat the full case study. Sorry.
No.
Ujita, are you giving them an exercise? Or
Yes, I'm finishing off now. So look, how we present this is very different. I just wanted to show you. You see the negatives have worked, how the negatives have shown. The younger people with the graphical, statistical ability will be able to do this for you. If you do, go to the next slide, please. I'm now going to rush to next slide, please. Oh, he's as bored as I am. This is the scoreboard that becomes harder soon. This is how a macro analysis looks like in numbers. Statistics people, the previous one, when you thought that it was qualitative, the qualitative we have rated like this. Your constituencies will rate, your stakeholders will rate on a qualitative, not quantitative. They will rate. That is the -5 too. So this is a dashboard. Sajid, who was online from the US, my team, was one of the key parts of doing the tabulation, right? So this is what we gave. You would remember FISD, all these groups started taking a 1 to 10 kind of a thing, right? So this is very far advanced. Now what it happens is that this is -5 to +5. That is where the hard part of it. 1 to 5 or a 0 to 5 is simple, right? It is just, you don't need to investigate. People say, when you give a negative score, now please understand, high up government officials were involved in the rating as well. people in government, right?
I think, I don't know about mapping and all, we haven't given value to our assets.
Ah,
We only did that for that, the scorecard. We did the other scorecard.
tomorrow we will discuss. Be careful with scorecards. Be very, very careful with scorecards. Scorecards can screw the good research you have done also. The narratives you have done also. If you have not done it very well into the giving scores, you will give a total, the scores will give you a total different picture. So that is something that we have labored. One thing that we did is I completely said that the younger team who has done the research will finally have the say with the experts. They are all professionals. All the young people are bloody good in their stuff. So I have told the experts, also seniors, that they have to work together, and the stakeholders have to verify them. You just can't give numbers you want. The constituencies will have to verify the numbers if somebody else is giving. Yeah. We are in the session of, we are already in the session of doing the stuff. That is why it's taking time.
Yeah.
No, but ask. This is more important.
What's it? Yeah.
I'll show you. Maybe tomorrow. Look, it's a scale. Can you, I will show you larger, very long spreadsheets as to how can you go two behind, two back?
Statistician.
Back. So look at this. So when we say a very large reduction, we have a large definition of what it is, and it gives you a scope. Not only the -5, a -5 itself is a larger scope. That is the hard part, Denison, to do.
Those who did
go back.
multi-dimensional poverty was doing what the
maximum forward.
Then they were doing, the girl is not here, but we did 1 and below 1.
So do you see the look? I apologize if I'm putting a lot to you. Honestly, this was a minimum of a 2-day event, right? To pack it into this is very hard. Let me give you a snapshot what we have done, so you will then understand how the differentiation happens. The voluntary people's review on the SDGs is the only thing that I talked about. We have done a voluntary subnational review for the first time in Sri Lanka. I'll give you copies of these. We have done a SDG 16 plus spotlight report, a qualitative analysis on the governance part of stuff, and localizing the transformation in the new normal. Go to the next one, please. I'm now going to rush through. Look at this. Look at this. This is where the governance comes in, right? Reimagining is a huge part of what we are going to do. So what you're not going to write a status quo. I don't want to lose Denison's thought before going into the strategy tomorrow, because this holds a strategy. Yeah, this is strategy. This is strategy. I can't go tomorrow without this in your head, because I need to start reading minds, right? The entire process is about reimagination. If you want to do the status quo, there's a VNR. Let the VNR do the status quo. Let them do what they do best, which is bullshit. I'm sorry, but totally governments are bullshitting around the world. It's not about your government I'm talking about. I'm talking about all bloody governments in the world who are bullshitting on this. That is why we are suffering on earth, right? But look at the process of resource governance, resource relationships, resource regeneration. You're talking, Sue, whatever you're talking going to a community is about their resource-based relationships, right? Communities are talking about their resource relationships and their commons and their ownerships and the loss of ownership and the exploitation by someone else. And you need to start working on resource regeneration, resource relationships, resource governance. Go to the next slide, please. This is a book. This is the framework I was talking. I think somebody asked about how to do this. About the natural ecosystem services based accounting. This is the game plan. I'm going to show you two, and I'm going to start winding down. This is the real one. This is how you conceptualize a completely new. I think it is SDG 17.4, which asks governments on domestic resource mobilization towards implementing the SDGs. What does it mean? At the end of the day, the UN tells each government, you are responsible for your own country's implementation of the SDGs. That's it, right? How do we find our resources? Please understand, economics or finances or money and resources are not the same. The communities that you are working will be called by your corporation as human resources if they are working for you or if they are in the supply chain. If you are a voter for a parliamentarian process, in getting elected, you are human resources as a citizen who has voting powers. Otherwise, you are chicken feed. So that is when some parts of the issues or subcommittees of the issues are just sidelined. They are insignificant in the voter base. They don't create a 0.011% or whatever of the vote of getting elected. But the water issue that you were talking about can go into generations of citizenry. Right? So look at some of the, I can't explain this to you. I will have to spend a lot of time. Sufficiency. Are you familiar with the term sufficiency? We grew up with sufficiency, not efficiency. Certainly, efficiency in the industrial, post-industrialization to the new modern industries became, you have 5 people or you have 1,000 people, you don't want to make it pay 2,000 people, you get it cut down to 1,000 people and you have to produce maybe 10 million whatever to gain 100 billion profit, and you call it efficiency. And the second part of it, resources are hard to buy and come in the world, not like the colonial period when we were colonized. You were colonized by the British as well. We were colonized by the British as well. If they start paying us their dues now for what the crimes they did on humanity in our part of the world, we don't need to do anything else. We just can sit around and do shopping all the time. Just buy from their money. The amount of exploitation that they have done. So sufficiency would be a mental state where you feel adequate of your needs being met. In a simple process. I don't know, when I grew up, we had modules on this growing up in Sri Lanka doing for our O-levels. And European, the 10-year framework of programs of UNEP and the Marrakesh process brought in high and the Asia Pro-Eco, Switch Asia, all of these came into this mantra of clean, green, right? And what are we talking about now? Are we talking about climate mitigation and adaptation now? Yes.
So, when we consider, are we considering cultural capital and
yes.
as well?
Absolutely, very good.
Are we considering cultural capital and classical as well?
Yeah. Natural capital valuation, I'll show you one slide. Absolutely. I need to bank on your expertise on this. Very good. So, you see, how do you build resilience? You build resilience exactly on those things. So, and ecosystems. So, this is a recalibration. The other one is very complex. You know, a lock of a combination lock of a safe. So, you go 1, 2, 3, whatever. So, you can create your combinations to your own modeling. This is our modeling for Sri Lanka that we did. Please go forward. I'm starting to end. Next slide, please. This is the answer to your just question now. So by December, end of December, I'm giving the government, Department of National Planning, a roadmap on how to on a natural capital valuation review mechanism, a clearinghouse and a review mechanism, and a roadmap with timelines, how to embed it into the system of national accounts in Sri Lanka. So I have a large team that is working with me. The conceptual parts and the guidance part comes from me, but we have 5 experts, 5 researchers, and a whole heap of other stuff going on, and 20 across the country university researchers and 18 national agencies working on this. Next slide, please. Dennis and I promised you to show this on how the private sector. Please understand, NBS. Is anybody familiar with NBS? Nature-based solutions. So the process now, money is moving into nature-based solutions. And if you look at the financing architecture from climate to sustainability to resilience, is moving towards nature-based solutions. The soft stuff is happening now. 2025 onwards, most of the money is going to go to that. And funny part is that the development assistance seems to be going to the private sector. And if you look at the world, as far as UNEP has reported, about 80% of the NBS investment is from governments. And only not even 20% is from private sector. And they are the ones who are benefiting from all the resources coming free. So things are changing. So this is a module that I have created. We are working on what is called ESG for sustainability, environmental, social governance. I think I was told that maybe Zoel, you are working on ESG, is it? Yeah, so she's manager ESG for EY, so maybe you can have a chat with her as well, and we are doing this. Next slide, please. I think it's the last one. Guys, this is where your strategy comes in tomorrow. My dear Denison, this is the latest thing that we are doing. We are just, this module has come up now. Creating a science policy action interface. Science policy action interface. I'm sorry to get your attention because it becomes hard for tomorrow.
This circles a bit easier than your earlier circles of problems.
Oh, you want me to complicate this? I'll do it for you. Okay, so I will show you tomorrow because I'm showing you only the final one. Look, one of the main things that the SDGs called for is a science policy interface. What does it mean? The policy for mainstreaming and integration required the data and analysis. So a science policy interfacing was essentially important. So what does happen in countries? The policymakers make their own policies. The scientists come and say these are the different numbers or whatever. Right? That is not working. But the third factor, some of you or many of you are into action. Work with communities, work with programs, projects, ground. The realities of what science says sometimes is not the ground reality. And what the policy says is not the reality. So we are trying to bring all three. We have brought in all three. The interfacing is hard, not the linear part of it. The interfacing part is hard. The next thing, the nexus between biodiversity, environment and water, or the climate, energy waste, or the economy, we are looking at different things, the prosperity, environment, sustainability. Please go down to the last one. No, 2 more. Go to next one. Oh, he's gone. This is what we are doing, Denison, now. We are doing 2 things, 2 VPRs. The first ever biodiversity voluntary people's review is happening now. The day I was flying here, my team was with one Professor Sarat Kotagama, who's the most well-known ecological scientist in the country. We are on this. And the second one is the climate change voluntary people's review. Now, what does it mean? We are going to focus deeper into independent reviews. From the generalized overviews to very deeper ones. Because one is the NBSAP, National Biodiversity Strategic Plan, aligned with the Biodiversity COP, which is happening in October. We don't have it updated. Climate change, NDC, nationally determined contributions, are off track from what we see. So we are coming up with our own reviews. Next one, please. Last slide. So a strategy is how we do this, and is we believe in investing in knowledge. Knowledge is not what you get in either schools or universities or adult training in modular base. Knowledge that I have been talking for the last 1 hour or more comes from very different places. The knowledge that you are collecting from communities are not taught in books. You are a university teacher, you will know. The second part is that knowledge is not about that you get from one person to the other. How you co-create knowledge into and innovate them into processes. This is the innovation part. All the little diagrams, the complicated stuff is all about co-created innovation. It's not only me. I do it a lot, right? But then you take it to forums and I get inspired by different things. Now, if I work with you, I get the inspiration to. I can't work alone on these things. It's the inspiration of exposure. This is where we are all bad, particularly civil society. The demonstration part. We don't have proof of concept for sustainable development so far. You see, so everything that we talk is abstract or rhetoric. Lot of stuff are in reports. Lot of stuff are in lectures. Lot of stuff are in conferences. The demonstration. But look at the private sector. The private sector, I don't know how, but they invest in the innovation very, very fast. Tesla, iPhones or whatever. The proof of concept is then and they are very fast. And they turn it into action very fast. We are slow in the demonstration. So, what I was trying to answer Sue is that it is not only a report. It's a process of demonstration that will inspire all of them in the room, all of them in your constitutions, all of us in different countries. My interest is that. Because the inspiration you can draw from Malaysia would have phenomenal effect across the world. I know this because from a tiny little country, Sri Lanka, the impact that we have made on a voluntary people's review for the first time in the world has reached the highest level of SDGs, knowing that the SDGs are not going correct, and probably the voluntary people's review in Sri Lanka is telling the truth, telling it in a scientific way, and a rational way, and a verified way. And the science has told the Secretary General that ask the countries to adopt this. Said all of this, I'm going to run into the toilet before my preaching of yeah, 1 second. And each slide I could have gone for at least a half a day session, right? I cut down at least about 50, 60 slides to come to this, right? At least 50, 60 slides I cut it down because I don't have time. So some of the stuff that you see are basically in a process of slides. I apologize for the agony that you have gone through, that I have taken you through, but I hope that I have reached out and put in certain mind maps for you so that when we start working, I can start helping you on simplifying. But please understand, simplification does not start at the beginning. I am not a great fan of that. The moment that you start simplifying, either you die in a brand marketing game, which I have owned the #1 PR agency in Sri Lanka, and I left it because money doesn't drive me anymore. But I had the largest public relations, owned the PR CSR company in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, I should enjoy those also. Right, okay. So hopefully, thank you so much. You want to say something? I have to hold on my bladder for some time.
No,
go on.
I'm a diabetic myself, so please carry on.
Okay, can I go and come back? Because if my bladder bursts here, you're not going to enjoy it.
You alluded to the CBD, the Convention of Biodiversity, which actually is very unpolitical. There's also the UN Convention on to combat desertification. Again, is very unpolitical. But then when you come to the
Climate
United
change.
Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention,
Only political.
it becomes highly political.
Yeah, true.
First, you have the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is scientific.
Yeah.
Already the sixth report has come out.
Yeah.
Each time they have to increase the percentage of human activity. Then you have the SAPSA and SBI, which takes place in Bonn every June.
Yeah.
Gurmeet gave up going to that a very long time ago. And of course, you have the yearly carnival. I call it a yearly carnival of the
Climate COPs.
the Conference of Parties. And this year we have COP29 in Baku, which I think is one of the very rare occasions that people will be flying into what used to be the Soviet Union. The first week of all the COPs are very scientific and the negotiations are done on scientific basis. The second week, all that negotiation gets thrown out of the window.
Yep.
Because all the ministers, all the prime ministers, presidents will be coming in to negotiate how much of emissions can I still produce. And this is the greatest issue that we have facing the world. When we talk about financing, every year the developed countries are supposed to pour in 100 billion US dollars. That was supposed to start in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. Today is 2024, they have only reached 100 billion in total. So there is no conviction of actually giving out the money to save the earth. I like to use this analogy, which is the most wrong analogy you can think of. You're playing cards on the Titanic and you rejoice that you're winning, but in another 1 hour, you're going to drown. And this is something I think we got to get across to our political leaders. This is something we got to get across to people who we meet in parliament, outside parliament. It's urgent. It's not something that is supposed to start now. It's supposed to have started many, many years.
Next slide.
Thank
Final.
you.
Thank you. Okay, this is what we have to do now. 100% agree. I think I use another word. It's a hippie colony. The climate cops are hippie colonies. You can see everybody with a backpack. Stopping. Oh, what's happening here? Moving to the next one. What's happening here? The first week is scientific because some of the rooms come and present real information, right? The second, you find the funniest brand of humanoids on earth congregating. So the politicians do take over. Right. Guys, this is what we think we could do.